So annoying. Okay, now I got it. Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Paul.
This whole thing mystifies me. How sometimes I have privileges as the host and sometimes I don't. I think the key is for me, and I'm saying this out loud so I remember it, not because you're interested, is to go sign in through the town website.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know why it then becomes magically possible. And then the other
Somehow
thing,
that's where the power is
that's
for you to do this.
that's where the power is. Yeah, I guess that's right. Okay. So I have quite a lot of power here. For example, I could ask B. Rogers to unmute just to hear her lovely voice. Yeah,
Not
she's
interested.
she's not interested. Okay. So Lynn, I think,
Hello.
yeah. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. Good
I think
evening, everyone.
I think
Hi.
I think I can safely say that I can share my screen. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to give that capability to anybody else because I know Kevin's got a slideshow for us, but
Okay.
we'll play that by ear. We'll jump off that bridge when we come to it.
Okay. Well, let's jump into this meeting. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Nahant Community Preservation Committee to order. And I'd like to actually hear who we have from the committee in the room. So could you just sing out, starting with Paul?
Paul Spurns here.
All right.
Nancy Cantelmo, representing Open Space.
Thank you, Nancy. Let me see.
Hi.
I call on Jimmy Dolan.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi. So we welcome you, Jimmy. I think this is your first official, well, I think you stood in before with us, but we now see you on the screen. So we're very glad to have you join us.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. I am looking for other committee members. I see members of the public here, which is always great. But I'm looking for...
I saw Dave Wilson.
Yes, there we go. I do see Dave.
It's like he's connecting to audio. Now he's muted.
Dave's muted now, still muted.
Okay, but he is here. So Dave Wilson represents community housing. Let me see who else I've got here. Well, we've got a lot of active and wonderful public participation.
Right. Austin said he was not coming tonight.
He's not coming. Okay.
No. He said emailed you, but thought you might not have gotten it. So
I was a little tied up today.
yep, I'm sure you were.
Let me see who I might be expecting.
Ellen?
Ellen Goldberg, who is going to be reporting tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I will text her while
Okay.
you do whatever.
Well, I have a quorum, so I can call this meeting to order and to welcome everyone in the room to the Community Preservation Committee meeting, February 28th, 2022. We're starting at just around 7:02, and calling this meeting to order. This meeting is being held by Zoom. We welcome the members of the public and their attendance. We would ask the public to convey their questions and comments in the chat room at the bottom of the screen, and we'll make an earnest effort to attend to those comments as our meeting at appropriate times in this meeting. Tonight, we're going to start with a review of the minutes from the past meeting. Actually, past two meetings that you've provided, Paul?
No, I didn't. We had minutes last time that we approved, but nothing since.
Nothing since? So
No.
I just was, being very attentive and printing things that we'd already looked at before. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, we approved them last meeting.
Okay. So
Sorry.
we had a meeting last week, but we do not have the minutes as yet.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. We will look forward to them. We'll look forward to them. Tonight, we'll be continuing to review the grant applications that we've received as our deadline of January 28th. And we had made good progress in our last meeting with the reviews assigned to committee members for their deeper review and reporting out. So I'm going to hopefully welcome Ellen Goldberg soon because she was on the agenda for tonight. But I'm going to give Jimmy Dolan a chance to report on his two grant applications because this is a special night, which will involve a special reading of Goodnight Moon. And I really do respect that, Jimmy.
Yeah, whatever books that, they're willing to let me read to them when we put them down.
Okay.
At bedtime after, I could pull them away from the TV.
Right.
But thanks for shifting me up. I'm prepared to discuss one of the two. I can discuss the second, having reviewed it, but not an opportunity to dig deep into it yet.
Okay.
So it's my intention to review the Nahant Preservation Trust application for the two double doors at the life-saving station.
Okay.
So essentially, I had an opportunity to speak with Emily Potts today, who submitted the application. I can tell you a little bit of what they're requesting, a little background, a few things that I uncovered, and I guess address any questions and invite Emily, if she's on, to share anything that maybe I've missed. So essentially, the grant is requesting, what do we got here? $50,000 to repair the two double doors facing the water at the life-saving station. Things that I was able to understand today, spending time with Emily. The doors are in disrepair. They are original doors from 1898. They were wrapped and were addressed in 1999 when there was some meaningful updates to the property. It is difficult for them to lock. The actual doors are deteriorating internally and externally, so it's difficult to close. I think there are a few things that I thought were important to address. This is a town property, so the town owns it. Important to address these concerns. In Emily's application, she mentioned that these things are beyond repair. A few things that are helpful to for us to address now. Considering the market environment, cost of labor and cost of materials are always changing, so it's tough if anyone's done a home project, you'll certainly understand the cost of materials and the cost of labor. So the initial application was for $50,000. $40,000 was the ask. $10,000 is the contribution the Preservation Trust can make to this project. Having spoke with Emily today, it looks as though if we could solve the replacement of these two doors with perfect execution and no other variables, that in fact the cost is closer to $60,000. In speaking with the gentleman who has done a majority of the contractor Emily spoke with, who did a majority of the repairs in the past, he recommended that in fact, if there are issues that they can't see, that we should in fact budget anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000. So the worst case scenario in replacing these doors could be $80,000, best case $60,000. So that differs from what was in the application. So in speaking with Emily today, it seems as though the next best step is to amend the application to identify a couple things. One is to change the ask from 50,000 to 60 and include a contingency that would cover the overages as they uncover what issues may exist behind these doors as they replace them. And in speaking with Emily, it seems as though they are comfortable continuing to contribute at the percentage level that they're doing now. So essentially, if it's a $50,000 spend, they're contributing $10,000, about 20%. So moving forward, it's my expectation that Emily will be providing an amendment that demonstrate this is actually a $60,000 project, which they'll contribute 12 and ask for 48, and also include in that a contingency where there is $20,000 contingency, 16 of which will be asked for the town of Nahant, and $4,000 from the Preservation Trust to keep it. Oh, sorry, I got my son here. He's ready for a story, so he's coming in to interrupt. So essentially, the contingency would be 20,000, 16,000 would include in the ask. So total, you're looking at about $64,000, worst case scenario, and about 16,000 coming from the Preservation Trust. So those are a few things that we uncovered today. We'll expect an amendment with a quote from the contractor to clearly, item. Hold on one second for me. So that is essentially where we're at. Again, it's a town property. It needs to be addressed so that they can even lock properly. Having looked at the photos of the property, it's clear that this is in disrepair. So I'm happy to address any questions that maybe I didn't address, or I'll have my son jump in and chime in as well.
Okay. Thank you, Jimmy.
No problem.
Okay, committee members, your chance. Any questions?
Jimmy and Emily, who's masquerading as Mia, do you think there's a role to play here for getting a quote from another contractor?
It's a good question, and actually a great question. Clearly, I think great minds think alike, because that was my first question. But so I do think that's always helpful. Now, having done several renovations myself, when I spoke to Emily and asked her that question, what she communicated to me is, in fact, this is the person who specializes in restorations. They've done an excellent job, and they have done a meaningful amount of work to the property, again, the town's property. And the work that this person does is far superior than other work that has been done on the property. I'm a person who doesn't pay full retail for anything. But what unfortunately I've had to understand and recognize is you get what you pay for. And a property like this, with the type of person who's demonstrated ability in the past, one, we're lucky to get anyone to do the work. And two, it sounds to me like this has been a good business partnership and their results have been strong. So it's possible to get another quote, but I'm not sure we're pairing apples to apples when it comes to the finished product.
Right. Yeah. The answer to that is yes, but what would you what would you know after getting that quote?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was I think you're absolutely right. Well, I'm sure we could get a quote lower and higher, but it sounds like we have someone willing to do the work and has demonstrated their ability to do the job well in the past.
All right. Other comments?
Lynn?
Yep.
This
Hi,
is Dave.
Dave. How are you?
Good. What the person who did the chapel doors, he would be qualified to do this work, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that would have been Cronenberger out of Connecticut, I believe, Dave.
Yeah.
So I think that it certainly a request could be made. Yeah.
Okay. Because they did a good job. I just like, that could be a second quote.
It could be. It could be.
Absolutely. Which is, I mean, frankly, and is not unreasonable to desire to have a second quote.
Yeah. So, Emily, if you're on the line.
I am.
Okay.
It's like Mia, but I'm here.
Okay. Great to have you here, Emily. So, Dave, I know it's Cronenberger and I do have their address. So if it's okay with you, Dave, I can provide that information to Emily.
That's fine. Yep.
That makes sense?
Yes.
We'd be happy to consider it.
Good comment. Thank you. Other comments from the committee?
This is Nancy. I was just wondering who is the person who has yet been unnamed that has done the past work. Maybe it's written down in the grant.
It's Jerry O'Dougherty. He has worked on the building since the trust took it over.
Okay, thanks.
He's the one who did all the work.
Okay. Other comments from the committee?
When was the chapel doors done by this other contractor who potentially would be a good source of quotes,
Jimmy, if I go back in the log of CPA projects, I could tell you because it was something that we funded off the top of my head. I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Got it. Fair enough.
Anyone who wants to is invited to look at the insert in the town warrant because that is the complete log of all CPA funded activities since 2005. But I'll double check that. I am looking at the chat. I see no comments in the chat. So I think certainly want to give the public the ability to comment here. But I think what we'll do is look forward to a revised or amended submission from Emily and the Preservation Trust, ideally with a second quote for this. Which, Emily, they might be able to provide based on photographs and dimensions of the doors.
And I think
if I dig deeply into to historical commission or historical society files, I might be able to find the original drawings for this building because we do have them. We got them from the National Archives years and years ago. Kind of remarkable.
That is.
And I think the only other thing that would be worth understanding is the time frame by which the contractor we received a quote from could finish the project. That's helpful. And should the other person that did other work that is clearly qualified to understand, one, would they provide a quote? Two, what the time frame be? I think that's helpful information as well, because this seems to me to be something worth addressing, considering the current existing condition and the fact that they don't operate properly.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So,
So Jimmy, are you going to tell us anything about the historical commission's request about
So
documents?
I could, but I don't think I'd be adding much more than the application, having not had any conversations or dug into it too much. So I would like to hold off, if that's okay.
okay. Well, would you do your best to be able to report back to us at our next meeting, which will be next Monday?
Happy to do it.
That'd be good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
I wish that we could hear the dramatic reading of Goodnight Moon, but
Yeah, happy to. You know what? I might be able to record it for you.
okay.
There's a great essay in the New Yorker about the author of Goodnight Moon.
Oh,
Worth
okay.
reading. Worth reading.
It's
Very
more
good.
exciting than you think.
She was a pistol. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Lynn,
Thanks for letting me jump in.
can I speak up for Kevin Andrews? Kevin, as everybody knows, is the principal of the school. And Kevin already came to one of our meetings and talked about his plan for the Heritage Trail renovation. And Kevin and I took a walk around, and then we discussed it last week. And we talked about some issues that we thought Kevin might think about. Number one, drainage. Excuse me. Number two, uncomfortable proximity to the DPW work yard, and some possible safety problems with routing kiddie walkers on a driveway that's used for the parking lot, and a couple other things. And we also talked about the committee's thoughts that maybe this is a project which should really be designed and presented by professionals, and that maybe we're talking about a two-stage process here. First, underwriting planning, and then underwriting construction. Anyway, Kevin was kind enough to consider all those things, and I don't know how far he got with it because he was heading out the door on vacation when we talked. But he's promised me, or he said he's got a slideshow. Now, how would I can I share your screen?
You're welcome to. Looking at the number of members that are here tonight, I'm not sure if everyone needs to see that, but I'd be happy to share it. You also, I just shared it with you through email.
Oh, you did? Okay.
You could make me host, but I shared it to your Gmail account, and it's essentially a number of photographs.
So if I make you host, then you can share your screen?
Yep. Yeah, I could. Okay. I'd be happy to do that.
You're it.
Okay,
I think it would be. I think this would be helpful because an effort has been made here, and we respect that.
Okay. Do I want to change the host to Kevin Andrews? Yes. And I guess you have to pass it back to me.
I got it. It says your host now.
Oh,
and now
wow.
I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen, and I will continue. I'm going to bop yours out, and I need to select the window that I want to share. Give me a moment to do that.
I don't think this is your first rodeo, Kevin.
Unfortunately not. No, this Zoom thing has been all too familiar.
Good.
I'm using my son's computer, though, and it's looking a little different here.
Yeah, well, be careful what turns up on that. A lot of TikTok, probably.
That's like, nope. Should be able to do this here. Share screen. Yes, continue. Share. Oh my goodness. Allow Zoom to share your screen. Open system preferences. Oh gosh. All right, we might have to.
Meanwhile, I'll see if I can.
Zoom permission now. Okay. Later. Okay, thank you for your patience here.
That's great.
Paul, I am on a different computer. Would you be able to go into the email and see your email and see if the
Yeah.
and open it from your
I
end?
appreciate your faith in me. I really do. All right. So let's see. I want to get this
And I'm going to
up
need to
here
I'm going to
where
make you host again.
I can see it. Kevin Andrews got it.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
okay, so now that I've got it, it
Yep.
says
Better
an
path
intriguing
route.
button on the
Yep.
bottom. It says open. Is
Yeah.
that what
Do
I
it.
want to do?
Yeah.
Okay, open.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the better bet
Great.
bike. Okay, very
Great.
good.
Now go to slideshow. Go to the slideshow button to get it bigger.
Privacy setting. I understand. I think I can get the
Oh, good.
slideshow should be at the bottom somewhere.
It's at the top next to the share button.
Okay. Am I sharing that screen?
You are. We already see it now. If you can make it
Good.
just a
Okay,
little bit
fine.
bigger.
I'm sorry. Oh, the slideshow's right up there.
Beautiful.
How's that?
Thank you, sir.
All right. So you
Okay.
just say switch and I'll switch it.
You got it. All right. So I'm taking you through. Yep, you're doing it. Great. So I just want to say thank you to the CPC for considering this and the time this evening to let me present it. I am looking to put a path in a pace that's already existing. There's already, as many of you know, the Nahant Heritage Trail runs from Lowlands to Bailey's Hill, and much of it is marked, but a lot of it's not clearly marked and not well used, I think, because there isn't a clear path, especially in this route that I'm talking about from Flash Road up to Bailey's Hill. And the first of what might be a multi-year project would be to put a path from what you're looking at right now, which is the Flash Road entrance to the Flash Road playground. And this is looking towards Bailey's Hill in the distance, putting a stone dust pathway. And my original idea was to just go ahead and follow the Nahant Heritage Trail. But then the committee nicely suggested that we take a more scenic route, and it is actually, I walked it today. It looks great. It's much more interesting than the typical Nahant Heritage Trail path. And so we'll just click through that here, starting at Flash Road Playground, and go ahead and click. And then you'll see we're out in the distance still is Bailey's Hill. On your left will be the Tots playground, and on the right will be a golf course. It was interesting having snow here because you can see people already use this route that you suggested. Go ahead and click again. And we're approaching now. I just made a hard right at the end of the soccer field. And now I'm looking in the direction of the Johnson School. It's still far off in the distance. And to your left would be the golf course. If you click again, we'll get closer. And here's those is a row of willow trees that separate the golf course from the soccer field. To your left would be the golf course, and this is a straight run of basically the back of the golf course. I don't think this section would interfere at all with play if there were a path were added here. Click again. Here it is to your right. This is right on hole 18 if you're familiar with the course. And there's a nice rise here. Speaking to the issues of drainage, the committee mentioned the fact that it is an area that we're looking at. And this whole area used to be marsh, right? So this spot right here, I think would be a wonderful place for a path. Again, I want to see what it looks like. And of course, if we had folks helping out with this, you could evaluate what it looked like on the golf course. I believe that you'd be on a fairway here, on the end of a fairway at a teeing off spot, and to your left would be your drive, and straight ahead wouldn't be a way you'd want to hit a golf ball anyway. So this is kind of, again, skirting between the golf course and the Little League field that you'll see in a second. You can go ahead and hit that button again, Paul. And so now we followed again, and then we took a right again, and now we're in the outfield of the Little League field. And so to your right is the far outfield, and to your left is those brambles that you saw, and straight ahead is the Johnson School. And And now the route would take a fork. If you went to your left, you would continue and you'd be back on what is currently the Nahant Heritage Trail. Although I have to say, Paul and I found a post there for the trail, and I really don't think folks use that route because it's not easy to find. But it does go behind the community garden and between the community garden and the back of the community garden and some brambles. And if you went to the hard right, you'd be going by Paul Kyra's, what Paul Kyra built as a pollinating garden, and you'd be heading towards the school. I see a lot of dog walkers that use this route, I think, would appreciate it as well, because it connects you right up to Castle Road. And I think that's the last slide there, Paul.
Okay.
So I want to say that I think it's a really wise idea to, have professionals involved in the planning stages. I know when I went to the last meeting and speaking with town administrator Tony Barletta, he mentioned that there was funding available for planning and for some of the logistic work. I'm happy to weigh in as much as I can and offer, ideas and be a contact person for the project. But I think it's a great idea to break it into a two-part project, a thorough planning phase, especially considering that, we'd be looking to move the Heritage Trail, and I'm not sure who's involved with that process, but looking to move the Heritage Trail from its current route. Thank you for pulling that slide up, which Paul has right here on the screen, moving it off from, currently it runs behind DPW and the fire station. It actually cuts across the parking lot. It's a shorter route, the regular trail, but the proposed route that the CPC mentioned gives you, it connects you with the ocean, it connects you with Bailey's Hill. It just gives you more open space to look at, which I think is what really people want when they go for a walk or are out moving about. I did make the application with partly students in mind, but I really think just creating a clear path for folks, build a mountain, and that's people going to want to climb it. So I think if we put a path in, I think people would want to walk it, and just having something like this, I think would be a real amenity to many age groups in town.
Wow, thank you,
I
Kevin.
would have to adjust the budget. I would think that we would look at 7,000 to 9,000 in planning, and then move forward with 20 to 30,000 in installment, and that's strictly back of the napkin. I did get a quote from a contractor for the project as it was designed originally. But I think it is important to make sure it's done well and done right.
Kevin, that's terrific. Thank you for doing this on the spur of the moment. And I'm so glad that some of the ideas we had sit well with you. I wonder, is it possible for you to get us another map laying out this new route, perhaps?
Certainly. Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem at all.
Great.
I could use my original plan and then also go off of this Heritage Trail map.
Okay.
Could I say a few comments? It's Nancy. I would just, I think it would be a good idea at some point to maybe touch base with Linda Pivacek, who had a large part in setting up the whole trail. And she was thrilled when I showed her the project. She's so always happy when people pay attention to her heritage trail, but I would love to have her included in discussions of altering it, especially for the good reasons that you suggested. So it's just I think would be a good thing. I'm really excited about the safety issues of stuff, having had kids ride through on bikes and stuff for those areas. And I think it's really important. I can't quite picture the relationship with the golf course. And I'm just worried about, I know whenever I walk by there and there's people playing golf, they're really upset that I'm doing that. but I don't quite know how much impinging on there. So I can't quite see that, but I want to just make sure that they don't get upset, and also there's not a golf ball danger for the kids. For the crappy
comment to
golfers
that.
who might not get where, you know, hitting it in the right place or something.
We could easily address it by going on the other side of those willows and brush, but there'd have to be a bit more bushwhacking to get through on one other side. So I think it could easily be done to go in the back of the soccer field rather than the back of the golf course.
Right.
But it would help once the snow's gone. I don't play golf there, so I'm not really that familiar with the course.
Yeah, I think also there might be a security issue if you have kids walking by themselves. Maybe they should be visible from the school side rather than be screened from the school side by the willows.
Mm-hmm.
Have I got the geography correct? Yeah.
Yeah, you're on point.
That's something we should think. I think you should think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hi, this is Tony. I can just weigh in a little bit on that. Yeah, that back corner, if you're looking at the map that's on the screen right now, where the number 4 is basically where that tee box is. And you're hitting towards like where the playground and ball field, you know, that light green and white kind of cross into each other. We've had complaints from folks who use the soccer field about, you know, golf balls finding their way into that back corner. So I agree, Kevin. I think you'd want to stay on the soccer and baseball field side of those willows and that old hitting cage. But that's still that back corner, like where the new tennis courts are. It's a little uneasy, you know, with golf balls flying in there. So as long as you keep it broad enough that you can make some adjustments for that safety concern, I think you're in good shape.
Great, thanks. And I think that's where the professionals come in too.
I think Nancy's brought up a great point about consulting with Linda, but I think it would also make sense to consult with the Open Space Committee as it's now constituted, the Recreation Committee, if it still exists, and probably the golf course operators, because, you know, all three and maybe more have a role here. But I'm the one that goes that back route, Kevin. So I think it's a nice route. Good birds, good vegetation, nice views.
Yeah. I agree. I hadn't walked it before. It's really a nice view.
It's nice. It's nice. So, okay. Other comments from the committee?
I'd like to ask Nancy if she could put me in touch with the individual she mentioned by email.
Sure. I'll send you that, Kevin.
Great. Thank you. Phone number is fine too if she doesn't do email, but I'd be happy to get in touch with her and talk.
Yes.
So in terms of looking to revise this application, I think you need to get a realistic estimate from a professional design company as to what they would charge, because it may be more than you think. So I wouldn't revise this until you had a couple of phone conversations with people and they can give you a more reliable estimate of what they would be charging.
Great, thank you for the suggestion.
There's a comment on the chat that someone just put in.
Well, give me a moment, Nancy. Wow.
How do you find the chat, by the way?
Press the little chat thing in the bottom.
The little chat thing in the bottom.
That little balloon, like in a cartoon.
It doesn't show up on my
If you
screen.
put your cursor down near the bottom.
Yeah, the problem is that my taskbar pops up. Hold on.
I can actually give you the comment. How's that? Because I
Yeah,
do.
please go ahead.
So the question is it safe to have this so close to the Johnson School concerning the security of the students?
Well, I'll say that we already have folks who walk dogs that aren't supposed to be walking dogs back there, and folks that we don't know already walking. And the Heritage Trail actually already runs right behind the school.
It does.
So it's
marked there.
Actually, it would actually be safer than we already. I mean, if that was a concern, I don't have a concern for folks on the Heritage Trail. We see them at recess, but it currently runs right along the forest playground, and so. This would only make it better, I guess, if that was a concern. But
Okay.
it's a good question.
It's a good question, yeah. All right, so it sounds like you're going to resubmit for a planning grant for this year, which will then be followed by an implementation grant next year. Am I interpreting this correctly?
Yes, you've got it.
Okay.
Kevin, can I ask a clarification with Tony listening in? Did you say that you thought that Town Hall had money available for planning?
I just said that Tony had mentioned that was part of the process. That was a potential part of the process, and that sometimes funding is granted for planning.
Oh, you mean the CPC process?
Right. I heard it from Tony, but I don't think the Town Hall had the funding.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks
a heck of a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, good. So let's go on to other parts of our agenda, the continuing review of these grant applications. I'd like to give Ellen Goldberg, who I see is with us, the chance to speak about the 2 grants that she was working on. Ellen?
I was double muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. We saw you talking to yourself.
Yeah. No, I was high on the security with the double mute.
Okay.
So thank you. Yes, I have 2 grants to present tonight. One is about the Bailey's Hill restoration, and the other one is Lodge Park and Memorial Point up at East Point. So we'll start, and I did have a chance to speak with Tony about both of these grants. So after I present them, he can hopefully offer up any clarifying details. And I believe Nancy would have some of those as well, if I'm not mistaken. So essentially we're looking at, now we'll start with the Bailey's Hill restoration. It's for restoration and access improvement to Bailey's Hill, essentially. And the request is for $50,000. It is similar in scope, or rather was sparked by the work that was done with the money we granted for Tri-Mountain Road area. And that turned into, as these things go, unexpected conditions, hill stabilization, extra tool rental, project management, and the money gets eaten up pretty quickly. But at the same time, it's a huge value add for the area to be invasive species removed and debris removed and brush cutting and things like that. So we're looking at a request for roughly for $50,000 to continue making progress on Bailey's Hill proper. The request gives them flexibility to continue the work, to decide if they can do some work with internal labor from the DPW as much as possible, renting the tools that they need to conduct the work themselves versus hiring it out. And it will be essentially, they're requesting this money to stretch it as far as they can to get as much done with the money as possible to continue progress on the Bailey's Hill area. And what I was trying to understand was, which part are we talking about? if you know the area where the kids will sled, kind of up there, you can potentially see the ocean, except right now it's completely overgrown and filled with invasive species. So the plan is to continue up that path and continue the cleanup in that direction. Tony, have I summarized that appropriately?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to, Ellen, if it's all right, I'd like to ask Nancy Cantalma, who's on the Open Space Committee, if she has any comments about this.
So I was just wondering how the area will be evaluated, comparing it to the other project, which Ellen will present, in which we have a professional person going in and making an evaluation of all the things that are there, and then deciding what things would be best to take out or keep or whatever, and looking at it in the larger picture. So we have the section closest to the ocean side, which is where the original grant was written for. And then I believe this is for the rest of the area on the one side. But we also have the other hill of sort of the twin hills there, which is a whole other project. And I think that that's not part of this, or is it? So those are kind of my questions. I mean, what is the evaluation going to be before the work's done, and exactly the areas involved?
Good questions.
Well, I think it would, this is Tony. I think it would take on a similar process that the Tri-Mountain project has taken on, which has gathered input from Open Space and the Conservation Commission. So it would follow along those same lines. And this is not on the Tri-Mountain Hill. This would be for the Bailey's Hill proper. So behind the gazebo.
Mm-hmm. And so it's an interesting question. I know that there has been sort of a reach out to the Conservation Commission, and I believe that Kristen gave some advice. I mean, when we talk about invasive species, we're heavily into the world of bittersweet and roses, but are we also talking about things like the Norway maples that are in abundance on the Tri-Mountain property, for instance? Have we come to a decision on trees like that?
My understanding from review with Chris and Kent was that we weren't touching the trees. We were basically removing invasive species that were causing harm to the trees, and really mostly focused on understory.
And that's a great distinction to make and to hear. Thank you, Tony.
I think in Zach's plans, there are some trees that do need to come down because they're falling over or old or stuff like that. So there would be some, but I think you're right. It's not a major tree taking down.
Right. Now, Nancy, I have noticed that they have started on the current grant that we have, and some of the locusts that had actually been pulled down or sort of heavily blown down have been damaged by wind, have been taken down.
Yeah. So
I have noticed some of that.
And we also might want to make an exception for Norway maples, which have the annoying ability to stymie the growth of many, many other species.
Well, they do. Unfortunately, these are great, big, handsome trees too. Yeah. 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 So I think it's probably I did attend a meeting with Nancy and Ellen Antrim and Zach and Tony some months ago, just beginning to sort of talk about the parameters for the existing grant. And I think that those parameters will be extended to the new grant. It might be a good idea for there to be a written statement, a brief on this, so we can actually make sure that the public who enjoys this property, both of these sites, will clearly understand the philosophy behind the practices. Tony, do you think that's something Zach could develop and that could be shared with Open Space and with the Conservation Commission and this committee?
I don't think I think we could find a way to put something in writing, but it might not be Zach.
Okay,
it might be something, because a lot of that came from like the Open Space Committee with adjustments from the Concom. So maybe the Open Space Committee could initiate the process, and then we could make some adjustments from there. Maybe they.
The other thing, I'm sorry. The other thing we talked about was perhaps putting up signs during the work so that people walking along there who see a major chunk of change going on could understand, like, this is part of a process. And, you know, I think that would really be helpful to get people involved.
That's a great point. I do think people love their trees. They love their vegetation. You know, we are making a change, and we want people to understand, as I said, the philosophy behind it and the fact that it's been a consultative process with the Conservation Commission and Open Space. I guess what I'm hearing, Tony, is that I'm trying to look at who is going to draft this brief. And it sounds like it's probably not Town Hall or DPW. It sounds like you're recommending that it be coming from Open Space with consultation from Concom.
I guess so, mostly because that's who we're taking our direction from, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and I can certainly work on it with them, but I don't want to, you know, misinterpret anything that, you know, by putting together the first draft.
Nancy?
We'll talk about this.
Thank you.
We'll work together about it. So yeah. I just wanted to make another point. If you're standing at Tudor Beach and you're looking over towards the two peaks, it's so striking how the one closest to the water is so full of evergreens and is green all year long. And the other one closest to the golf course is full of the deciduous trees, especially the locusts, which are gorgeous in the spring when they're in flower, but rest of the year they're so barren and gnarled up and stuff. And it just seems to me there might be a little better balance of thinking about some more evergreen trees on the golf course side too, in terms of when we think about planting.
Well, we may not be there yet, but we are at a point where we're actually doing the removal of the invasives and so on. So I'm looking for a guidance statement. Maybe that's the way I want to put it, a guidance statement from the Open Space, which I'm hoping, Nancy, on the load of things that you have on your desk at Open Space, I'm hoping that you could draft such a document that would reflect, you know, the comments that you have gotten from the Conservation Commission, and that could then be available for people to read, perhaps on the town website. And then we could also prepare some signage that would help people understand this. Do I see a slight nod of the head, Nancy?
Yeah, well, I'll talk about it with the committee. But can I just clarify one thing? So this is not going to involve any outside professional people giving an evaluation of the area. Is that what I understand?
That has not been requested in this grant application. So it was something that we talked about on the ground. when we were out there, but that is not the substance of this application.
Yeah, I think the effort of this is similar to what's happening right now at Bailey's Hill, which is to remove invasive species that are choking out, like vines that are choking out the living trees. And especially in the areas of the trails where it's making it almost like shrinking the size of the trail. It's growing in, that recreational space. So I don't know. I don't think we need, to spend all that much money on professional assistance to identify, the invasive species that need to be removed.
We also might think about it when we talk about replanting.
That's a good time to think about getting some advice on that. Yeah. I will quote that we have a very positive comment from one of the chats, clearly in support of this, moving forward with the removal of the invasive species. I'll quote here, the invasive species are literally pulling the trees to the ground, which is true. So there's a positive comment on this, but I think a guidance statement about what is being done and why is important. So Nancy, I hope that the Open Space Committee can craft such a statement.
Okay, we'll take it under advisement.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You do so much already. I hate to ask for more, but there it is. Other comments from the committee on this application?
This is Ellen. Let me just add that in my discussion with Tony, it was clear that, and I think I said this earlier, the goal is to use, is that the internal labor for the town is much more cost effective than hiring this work out. And you get your dollar stretched much farther by using the DPW labor. And it's significant, per hour.
That's a great point. Thank you. Okay. Well, we've got other things to sort of talk about. Well, let's move on if we can. If there's no other comments from the committee, and seeing no further, another comment from the chat is endorsement for this project and endorsement with the idea that this could be a multi-year budget investment. So that's kind of consistent with this discussion. So let's go on to Lodge Park.
Yep. So I spoke again with Tony today about Lodge Park, and this is essentially maintenance management. Well, they're calling it, the title of their project is Maintenance Management and Stewardship Plan for Lodge Park and Memorial Point. And this is the town in conjunction with SWIM. And I understand that there are lots of interested parties here who want to make sure that this area is protected and properly maintained for the future. So the request is for us to provide $4,500 to be matched $3,000 for a total of $7,500 project for a plan for the area for identifying erosion and remediation, to give the Open Space Committee and the town and other committees the knowledge and information they need to be able to make informed decisions about maintaining this for the future, identifying mitigation, and understand critical environmental issues that are surrounding this area. So this is strictly a planning grant. They're not doing the work. There's no proposal for the work. This is for professional assistance in getting the plan and cost estimates for the future. Tony, have I summarized that appropriately?
Yes, again, very good. I think Nancy probably should weigh in on this one too.
So the group that started this was Friends of East Point Nahant, and including swim. And as you said, Ellen, there's a lot of people who are really wanting this place to be preserved in a ecologically correct way. And, you know, we've looked at the history of the area. There's been many plans over time, and I think they've evolved as we've understood some more about, if you look at the old plans, they didn't like talk about invasive species and a lot of the stuff that we understand now. So I think we've built on the plans that were historically developed and tried to make them more ecologically correct at this time. I just think we want to have a maintenance plan to keep things going for the future. One of the areas is a meadow, and meadows are areas in Massachusetts and a lot of places that are disappearing. It's not a giant meadow and it won't make a huge statement. We're not going to get meadowlarks and bobolinks and all sorts of great birds there because it's not so huge, but it does make a difference for a lot of other insects and stuff. And it's a really important part of town that we should value, and we want to do education around that. It just involves Lodge Park at this point. And if the area expands in the future, then we'll see what happens more with this kind of plan. The other thing I want to stress is that people are very, we want to preserve the original intention, which was for passive recreation, and hope that going into the future, we will continue that idea that it's not meant for active recreation. Structures aren't to be built and ball fields aren't to be built up there and stuff like that. It's for dog walkers and bike riders and stuff like that who want to, bird watchers and whale watchers and all those people who just want to be up there for those reasons, which was what was originally intended.
Thanks, Nancy.
And Lodge Park, just for everybody's edification, it's the area of East Point, right, around, that is in the center of that path going around the cliffs, correct?
Yeah, it does go down a little bit on both sides. And so one of the issues that I'm sure you read in the project was about safety. You know, like we want to have plantings there that will keep, that have some dense vegetation to keep people from falling over into the cliffs without changing the natural structure. But it does, the land of Lodge Park does go down the sides a little bit of the cliff. Both sides, I think.
So Nancy, would this deal with things like the concrete guardrails and rusted railings that sort of survive, I think probably from the World War II era around that perimeter?
Yeah, that whole safety issue and how we best attain it is part of the discussion with the people doing this work. There's another aspect of it, which is about education, signage, the geology, the plants, the islands that you see off of, or what you see in the future, I mean, in the distance, sorry. You know how you go to places and there's these contour things and like, well, that's that and that's that. And you understand what's going on. It's something else that we were thinking about doing in that area, so.
Okay. All right. Very good. We have a lot of people in attendance tonight, and I'm looking in the chat to see if we have any comments from the group. Because Nancy, I think I see some of the people who might have been involved in this application, which is great to have everyone here tonight. Okay. All right. Well, seeing no comments in the chat, I'll ask for any other comments or questions from the committee just before we move on to the next thing.
So this is Ellen again, and I just want to, I think, drop the final comment, which was it's great to see the request go for professional planning at the beginning stages of this project, you know, thinking that it's designed to ensure all the things that Nancy just mentioned. You know, it's designed to ensure the original intent, and it's designed to get professional advice and guidance on how to best preserve and scale it for the future.
Okay.
That's my impression.
All right. Okay, well, thank you. Well, with that, I would like to go on to some new business. Or excuse me, I have two more reports to ask. Nancy, you've been a star tonight. Do you want to talk about the flagpole application?
Oh, sure. I was also hoping we might double back on the playground issue too, but what is your pleasure? But
well, I'd like to start with the flagpole.
Sure.
Because we haven't talked about it before, and then go to applications that we have heard before, and that would be the playground. And we have a resubmission on 9 Howe Road in Little Nahant.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So we talked last week about priorities that the town set for the various projects that they were sponsoring. And the flagpole is the last priority. And the playgrounds, I think, was 7 of 8 or something like that. So these are kind of low down on the priority. Doesn't mean they're not important, but just to give you the town's perspective. So the flagpole was last restored 6 years ago. Basically, for people who don't know, it was an oak mast gotten from a naval yard near Philadelphia and bought by sea to Nahant, which I think is so cool. So it was set up, I think, you know, in 1912, something like that. So 6 years ago, it was restored, and it is part of the National Historic Landmark area that whole area is. And 6 years ago, it was $20,000 to fix it up, and this year this request is for $25,000. And I think from Tony's comment that a lot of that has to do with the staging to just do the restoration and the painting. And so I said, well, how come we couldn't use the fire trucks, you know, and stuff like that? And then everybody sort of said, like, what are you kidding? You can't take that equipment out of, you know, out of working. So just to, you know, do this to save money, etc. But anyway, so that's the why it's being charged that much based on what was done 6 years ago.
All right, well, thank you. I think I'm going to take a skip over the playground because I'm having a lot of commentary from the audience about wanting to talk about the 9 Little Nahant Road or 9 Howe Road grant application. So I would like to sort of push the playground discussion, the revisiting of the playground information to after we hear about 9 Howe Road. The committee received today a resubmission by the town of Nahant for this. I appreciate, Tony, that you are here tonight, and I'm going to give you the opportunity to discuss the resubmission. I appreciate that there's been a lot of thought about this, and I also understand that this is a project with it has a difficult time frame associated with it. There's a lot of unknowns. So with that, Tony, take the floor, please, and tell us what this resubmission is about and why it's coming to us now.
Sure. You know, what's happening over at 9 Nahant Road, that has been changing pretty rapidly.
Right.
Keep in mind, when we submitted this application originally, we had just found out that the property was going to be foreclosed and go to auction. And so at that time, we were, you know, putting together this application without having much discussion on what the future use would be if the town were able to acquire it. So we had checked off every box and basically put every option on the table to have a discussion later on. Also at the time we were, I don't know if you recall, at the time we were, and it's written in the original application, that we were, you know, reaching out to HUD to see if we could get involved in purchasing the property as a direct sale prior to the auction. Since then, we've discovered that's not possible. But so we felt that was an important distinction to make in the amended application. So the new information that's led to the amended application is most notably HUD has informed the town that a direct purchase cannot occur before the effort of the auction. Secondly, as I mentioned, you know, talking about potential future use, submitting this application to you and touring the property, it's brought a lot of attention from the abutters, from the neighborhood, and it's been, you know, pretty clear from the abutters and the neighborhood that housing is not something that they would, or a town effort for housing is not something they would like to see here. So we're amending the application to remove that part of our application. And we would ask that any, if this were to be favorable by the committee and put onto the town meeting warrant, that housing not be included in the language as a potential future use.
Okay.
I wanted to kind of explain a little bit more about what's happening with the property. So the auction, which was originally scheduled for February 15th, has been postponed by HUD. We've reached out, we've asked Congressman Moulton's office to ask as well. They have not given us an answer as to why they've postponed. But it's, you know, I want to be clear that without authority and an appropriation approved by a town meeting vote, we can't submit a bid at that auction whenever, you know, if it occurs prior to town meeting. So there's a couple different options here that could occur. If the auction occurs before town meeting and a winning bid is accepted, the town will not have an opportunity to purchase the property. And thus this application would be rescinded completely, and there'd be no need for this to be brought up by the CPC committee or put at town meeting warrant. If the auction occurs prior to town meeting and no bid is accepted, so it's an unsuccessful auction, HUD takes ownership of the property and then would consider engaging the town for a direct sale discussion. This application is for 1.1 million, but that's not the final price. If we were to, you know, if HUD were to go to the auction and, you know, get a bid or multiple bids, but they were not high enough for them to accept, you know, that would be our floor starting point with a negotiation with HUD. So it's up to 1.1 million. It doesn't mean we would walk in the door and say, here's 1.1 million. It's just putting a cap on our negotiating point stance. Alternatively, if for some reason this auction doesn't occur prior to town meeting, and it were to be postponed until after town meeting, if town meeting gave us the authority and the approval, an appropriation and the approval, then technically we could submit a bid at the auction. Again, you wouldn't go into it at the top end of this range. And we'd have to figure out later on what that bid would be. Right. I had another point I wanted to make, but I lost track of it.
Okay. It may come up in the discussion.
Yeah.
I appreciate that this was a surprise to the town administration that this property would be put up for auction in this way. I understand that the original date for the auction was canceled unexpectedly with no explanation by HUD. We are all fascinated that HUD is involved, but we understand from the grant application that HUD took over a mortgage that had been passed on by a foreclosure event. We also understand that there's a considerable amount of back taxes owed on this property, which the town was hoping to recover. So there's a lot of ifs here, Tony. There's a lot of ifs, because now what I'm seeing in this application is that the idea of affordable housing or community housing is withdrawn from one of the possible uses of this property, and that we are then left with open space / recreation and historic preservation as being the two potential funding categories. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, what was presented to the town is a property that owes the town funds, has a historic property on it in a neighborhood with zero open space. And, as with any large space private property in town going up for sale, the threat of an unfriendly housing development exists. So, we felt it was important that we should get involved and do our part to try to, control the future of the property. We've obviously, as I mentioned, we were putting this first application together pretty quickly. And so we threw, all options on the table for a later discussion. But it's been made pretty clear to us from the abutters in the neighborhood there that they don't want to see a town effort of affordable housing. And that's not, our mission wasn't to, force anything on this neighborhood. So, hearing that, there's other areas in town that we can, continue to look at for housing solutions. But, it's pretty clear that this isn't one of those spaces. So when it comes to, we didn't take historic preservation off of the application at this point. It obviously has historic value. What it would cost to restore the property is still unknown. What the future use of that historic property once restored, what it would be used for is unknown. I just felt it was given the fact that it's one of the first homes built on Little Nahant, it's almost the historic value of the property is too high to just eliminate it from this application. So that door is still open, but I think from what we've heard, those two questions really need to be answered before you would get neighborly support for them. But again, we don't, the stars have to align for us to even be in that position. If this auction occurs before town meeting and a winning bid is selected, this application is rescinded completely and this topic comes off of the table.
Okay. Well, committee members, I'm sure you have lots of questions, so I'd like to give you the opportunity to ask them.
Tony, let's say a private bidder makes a bid that that HUD accepts, whatever it is, $1.1 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million. Does the town get its $400,000 in back taxes from this amount?
We're going to fight, tooth and nail for our back taxes. I can tell you that.
Why wouldn't we get the back taxes?
There's a in the law regarding deferred taxes for seniors, there's a legal analysis there that says that HUD would be owed their funds first, that they would be recovered before we would. We obviously disagree with that, but HUD doesn't.
Okay.
So, certainly if someone were to bid, 1.6, both HUD and the town are made whole. But if someone bids less than that, then we're going to be, going through some sort of legal process to recoup our funds.
Okay. The second question, if it's bought by a private bidder, how densely could they develop that property? And is it conceivable that they could develop it without much attention paid to our zoning laws?
So the town doesn't meet its current required threshold of affordable housing. So any property that is, turned into a housing development that includes affordable housing, the developer can essentially apply to supersede all of our local zoning. There's still a due process there, but so there's it's a lot to go through. There's still like environmental impacts, traffic impacts, feasibility, density in the neighborhood, but that's a long process. But essentially, you have less to work with when they're utilizing the 40B, loophole to your local zoning.
Right. And who has to fund the opposition to that development? Is it the town or is it the local abutters?
The town. The town, certainly if we're engaging mass development on, in this, I'm just speaking generally, like in Swampscott, right? Swampscott's got 2 different 40B developments that have been proposed to them. They had one that was proposed, I forget the exact neighborhood, but it was in an extremely dense neighborhood that was going to be built on top of like a huge piece of granite. It was going to create a number of environmental impacts. Blasting was going to be required. The traffic impacts. There was so many things that were going to make the project adverse. So they've reached out to mass development, and it just kind of, they worked on that for a long time, and it ended up not happening. They have another 40B project that, they're running into neighborhood issues with and concerns as well. That project's likely to occur, but they are, they are going through a very grueling process as well, which means time and money. So you can fight a unfriendly 40B development, and it costs a lot of time and money on both parties. But it's obviously a hard battle. It's a long, hard fought battle.
Okay, thank you. Other comments from the committee? No one's raising their hand on the committee.
We'll have this topic on our agenda with the Board of Selectmen on Wednesday night as well. So, you know, if the committee's short on time, I do see a lot of questions and comments in the chat, which I'm happy to answer now or Wednesday night.
I leave that to you, Tony. I mean, here's what else we have to do tonight. And we have to return to the playground with an update of the information that Nancy has and you have provided to us. And then we have to look at the overall picture of the grant applications. So I appreciate that we've got lots of attendees tonight. We have a number of questions that have been raised. I think we could take, you know, I think there's probably 4 essential questions that I'm seeing here. And this may be the time to begin this discussion that may continue on Wednesday night. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too.
Okay. So the first one that I see here, other than get on to this part of the meeting, folks, is will seniors who, for whatever reason, can no longer stay in their homes be able to pitch tents on the $1 million open space if no housing support through CPC will be recommended? So that's question number 1. So that sort of seems like the person sending this may have some support for community housing.
Quick answer on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You know, senior housing remains a top issue for our town. And it's not just senior housing. We want to encourage young new families as well that currently can't afford to come into town. So we have a couple different housing issues that, as you know, we've applied for funding in another application to hire a professional to help us with those issues and help us, you know, figure out how we can, you know, improve our zoning or, you know, find other town property that we could potentially turn into housing or, you know, look at those issues in a different manner. Just because we have removed housing from the application doesn't mean that we're ignoring the housing issue in general in town. We're just hearing from the neighborhood that, you know, that's not what they want to see there. And again, the goal of this application, the goal of this effort is not to go against the neighborhood. It's to you know, actually help them out. So we're still looking at senior housing issues across the board.
Okay. That's I think an important clarification. The next question is, if historic preservation is still part of the proposal, 1, what would be that cost, and shouldn't that be included in the application? And I think the questioner is saying you've got a rehabilitation cost, shouldn't that be part of the story? And then 2nd, if you restore a 7-bedroom, 7,900 square foot house, what else would you use it for if not for housing? So
the possibilities of the future uses of a restored historic property are many. So it certainly, housing is not the only thing. I I'm not here tonight prepared to put those options on the table or push for one future use versus another, or even be able to say how much it would cost to restore that property. What I'm saying is that that property is historic. It has historic value. And to just take it out of the application at this point without looking further into those things, I think would be the wrong thing to do. So I don't, it's very possible that historic preservation is not the answer, that we can't come up with a future use that everybody would be happy to see, and it would cost way too much money to restore this building. So it ends up being open space by default. That's very, very possible. It's just too soon, I think, to take historic preservation off the table without looking further into it.
Well, since you've raised the question of open space, interestingly enough, the very next comment from somebody is, we have open space, the playground and Short Beach. Another comment is this, have you considered buying a 30,000 square foot lot at Spouting Horn? It's only $950,000. So.
The town is not, I mean, those are obviously, remarks fueled by a certain position, I think. And I think that, I mean, the town is not just seeking to purchase any open space that comes available. Little Nahant, yes, it has the playground down by Short Beach, but Little Nahant has zero open space within it. And this, this property could present that opportunity to the people of Little Nahant. What we've heard from the neighborhood is support for open space if the town were to get involved. So, I mean, for those who are asking that question, and if they're asking that question because they are, they would prefer to see a private developer buy the property and build a house or two houses or how many houses, that is very much still an option. Should this auction take place before town meeting, the rules of the auction require a 10% of your bid paid within, I think, 15 days, and then full price within 30 days. The town does not have an appropriation and therefore cannot participate in that auction without a town meeting vote. So if the auction takes place before town meeting, the town's not going to be involved in it. Only if the auction fails would then the town be in a position to potentially get involved. Still needs a town meeting vote, and the people in town would decide whether or not they want to give that appropriation, how much that appropriation is, for what purpose. It would come down to a town meeting vote.
That timing issue is a very important distinction. Thank you. And you can keep repeating that as many times as you want, Tony.
I mean, I would, if the auction fails, then the town's in a position, I would think if the auction fails, it's because either no bids were submitted or the bids that were submitted were so low that HUD couldn't accept them. So the town would theoretically then be in a position to potentially purchase this property for a very good price. If the town does not, if town meeting says, we still don't want you to get involved, then HUD will go and sell this directly to someone else. And the town will have zero control over the future use of that. So that's what it ends up coming down to, is whether the townspeople, when the opportunity gets presented, if the townspeople want to take advantage of that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. Just a note about the historic character of this property. And thank you for including this in your grant application, Tony, because it was actually published in the American Architect and Builders News in, let me see, 1880. At the time this property was built, it was one of, I believe, 2, if not 3 buildings on Little Nahant. Little Nahant was empty except for this estate and 2 other buildings. So it was a very different place. It was open to meadows and views and so on. It is an important house. It was published, as I said, J.T. Wilson, the celebrated selectman and builder of Nahant, built it for a Thomas Howe, which is why it's called the Howe Estate on Howe Road. And it was designed by an architectural firm called Waite and Cutter. It was, I think, a very beautiful residence, and it has been sadly neglected for some time, but there are still elements there. And I was very fortunate to be part of a visit with Dave Wilson to take a look at that property with Tony and others, just to get a sense of it. And I believe that it's rare that we're being able to have that opportunities. Having said that, we have other committees or other questions here. This one is, would Nahant owning this property be fiscally responsible? Letting it accrue $300,000 to $400,000 in back taxes was the first mistake. Asking the town to spend $1 million plus and forego future tax revenue doesn't sound prudent. So that's a comment about, the policy we have about deferring taxes to people who request that. Do you want to just say a quick word about that, Tony? Because I don't want people to think that the town is imprudent. This is part of a plan.
So I'm sorry, the question is about
how do back taxes like this accrue, and what is the town's policy on this?
Well, it's not a policy, it's state law that of a certain age and of a certain income, you have the ability to defer your taxes. And it's capped at 50% of the value of your home. This property falls into a very rare occasion that the homeowners, I think you become eligible.
They were dead.
No, when they started deferring the taxes, they were very much alive.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
No, B, yeah, you weren't.
That's okay. But they deferred them until they passed away. And they pretty much got right up to like 48, 49% of the value of the house. So it's not this wasn't like a decision by the town. You have that ability. We don't, as long as you meet the eligibility as listed in the statute, we don't pick and choose whether to give you deferment. So unfortunately, fortunately for them, they lived a much longer life beyond the start date of eligibility. Unfortunately for us, that meant many years of deferred taxes.
Okay, so I think it's important. So it's not a town policy; it's a state law. You were following you followed the guidelines of the state law. Period. Okay.
Yeah, and again, as far as why would the town want to somehow prevent a private owner to come in here and build on the property and then bring in new growth? The town, again, the auction occurs before town meeting. The town can't prevent that. Anybody could go to that auction and make a bid. That very much could happen. If the auction fails, then the town could potentially get involved, and the townspeople could vote no, and HUD could go and sell it directly to a private developer, and that would mean new tax revenue for the town. You know, that's as the CFO side of me says, absolutely, we want as much new growth and new tax revenue as possible. You know, sometimes, you know, in government, you have to make these decisions where you get involved because of, you know, trying to do what's best for the community. And we feel that because of the historic value of the property, because of the lack of open space, because of the threat of a unfriendly 40B development, the town should make an effort to put this question in front of the people of the town, and they can decide whether or not we would get involved.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Tony. There's a whole raft of other questions and comments here, but let's open this up to participation by members of the audience. And I think since actually you spoke first, why don't you have the floor?
Thank you, because I did put a comment in the chat. I didn't know if you would.
Trouble hearing anything.
Oh. I put a comment in the chat. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. And the comment that I put is, I don't understand why we are considering purchasing this property. It is a beautiful historic building, and the people I know who've been in it say it would be $1 million or more to make it habitable. It's been so badly abandoned. So the idea that we would purchase it for the historic value of the house, no matter how beautiful, seems like a non-starter, because that house probably won't be repaired, not on our multi-millions. And we have a lot of expenses pending in town. We have sewer, we have flooding and drainage. We have a lot of expenses that are urgent, and we have the potential of expenses associated with East Point. We have zoning laws to manage development if we're worried about the development there. But and somebody could decide, oh, this is so historic, I'll pour the millions in to restore it. But however you slice it, it seems profligate to me to decide, oh, we have this house that used to be valuable and it's still historic, and we're going to put up over $1 million. We're going to forego revenue on that property. And I hope, Tony, that you weren't thinking of, oh, let's have another community center, because it seems like we have lots and they're great, but I'm not sure we need more. So I just don't understand the logic of doing this, frankly, at all.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers from the group, I do see more questions, but I also saw the desire for people to speak from the audience, so we're respecting that.
This is Josh Antrim. Is the mic open at the moment?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, it's clear from the chat comments and other sources that there's various opinions about what should happen with this property. I think Tony stated it pretty clearly, but the town of Nahant can't take any action toward the purchase of this property unless it's authorized in advance by a vote of town meeting. You know, this application, this is a CPC meeting, so this CPC application was submitted in case the HUD auction isn't completed before town meeting, and to provide the voters a chance to decide what Nahant wants to do with this property. Some people, you know, Tony just mentioned that, you know, foregoing the real estate income, you know, is less money in our coffer. Some people prefer open space. What this CPC application does is provide democracy a chance to be enacted in the town of Nahant. It gives the voters of Nahant a chance to decide if we get that far, what happens with this property. You know, the answer may be that we don't want to spend the money, and it goes to whatever private sale takes place. It could be the town says we do want to spend X dollars to create a park. It could be that they want to do historic preservation. That's democracy. So to me, what this application does is allow the voters of Nahant to have a chance, at least, to decide what happens with this property. And of course, we all have different opinions, and that's why we vote on these things.
Thank you.
Oh, that's all. Thanks.
Okay. Can I see other hands raised for comments from the listeners? Anyone else see hands raised? I mean, we have continuing comments.
There's more. There's still more in the chat, I guess.
Yes, thank you, B. I was just about to say that if you heard me. We have continuing comments in the chat, which I can return to. But I do want to give those who wanted to speak the opportunity to speak now. Otherwise, I'll go back to the comments. Okay. All right. We have a lot about, one question that has been raised is, would a tax lien continue to a new owner of the property?
So from our understanding is the tax lien would stay with the estate. So if we would essentially be chasing after the estate for any of the back taxes we didn't recoup from the sale of the property. This isn't typical. This isn't like a typical situation because the property has these deferred taxes and the reverse mortgage with HUD. It's not like a typical tax lien situation. You would think it would pass on, and you would think we would get paid first, but it's not that cut and dry. Obviously, that's the argument that we're making, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other comments would be that it would require more than $1 million to restore or rehabilitate this property, given its situation or condition.
I don't, that number has been thrown around a lot, but I don't know of any professional that's, examined the property and given that estimate. It's possible that that's an accurate guess, but I don't, what if it isn't? What if it wasn't that expensive? What if there was a future use that everybody was on the same page about? Wouldn't you look back 100 years from now and say, I'm glad we saved that property? Then again, on the other hand, it's possible that it's too expensive to save and there is no future use that everybody would be on the same page for.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, the only thing we know right now is that it has historic value. And so those questions can be answered later on. In my opinion, I think it's just too soon to shut the door on historic preservation.
Mm-hmm. Ken, I see you raising your hand. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And I think the questions I had put in the chat have already been addressed. I just want to, I guess, react to what Tony just said in terms of 100 years from now. As with other projects, 100 years from now, the town's biggest problem is not going to be whether a historic building on top of Little Nahant was saved. I agree it's beautiful. I agree it does have some historic significance of some kind, though no one's ever declared that since it was written up in 1880. But again, this seems like another misprioritization of what the town should be worried about and what should be put in front of voters that actually benefits the town long term and in fact addresses its survival, as opposed to, you know, some buildings that are very nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's more a selectman question than a CPC question.
Yeah, we can bring that up on Wednesday night.
Yeah,
I mean, Ken, I'm not saying that this is the biggest problem in town at all. Not even close.
No,
we certainly have the ability to handle multiple things at the same time. And if the townspeople don't agree with the need to get involved, they vote no.
Yeah, Tony, yes, except that what the townspeople are allowed to vote on or presented with voting on is very much controlled by what's on the warrant and who elects to put what on the warrant. So if this isn't close to the top of the priority list, as you just said, why aren't the other items that are on the priority list in front of voters as opposed to this?
This isn't, by the way, I'd like to just say, could I just jump in and say, this committee is reviewing 9 applications, Ken. So we are in, I think, meeting 2 of our review. So we're happy to have citizen input. We're happy to have, you know, in fact, we rely on citizen input and the input of our committee. But this committee is not yet at any position of making a recommendation of moving this forward. We're hearing and learning right now. So that's important.
Yeah. And again,
important distinction.
And again, it's very possible. It was, you know, a surprise to us that February 15th auction didn't occur. So, you know, it's very possible that that auction occurs before May 21st. And a winning bid is submitted and this doesn't even go to town meeting.
Right. So there's a lot of ifs in terms of the time schedule.
It's only if, again, it's only if the auction fails or if it gets postponed that far that, you know, the opportunity presents itself to the town.
Yeah, just, you know, to allow the CPC or the Community Preservation Committee to move forward with their meeting, we will have a Board of Selectmen meeting on Wednesday night, and all are welcome to chime in at that meeting with questions that are more related to town warrant than they are to CPC. So I hope you all can do that, because I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding about this issue, and I hope we can clear that up.
I would like to make one distinction about the historical significance. Yes, I had mentioned the 1880 American Builders Survey, but in fact, when the townwide survey of historic resources was conducted in 1989, this property was identified as important and actually eligible for National Register listing. So it has been recognized for its historical significance in recent times. It's not on the National Register, but it's eligible for it. So, other hands raised. B, I see you in person. You know, it's good to see you in person. I do have other comments in the chat column about, you know, this could be 2 nice houses on this property. I see several of these. There's a question to the Board of Selectmen. Have the Board of Selectmen consulted with a real estate attorney about this property?
I guess we could take that up on Wednesday. I'd like to know a little bit more about regarding what. Certainly we've consulted attorneys regarding the back taxes and who gets paid and what that process looks like.
Okay.
I just for the committee, you know, I see a lot of comments in there about, you know, 1 or 2 houses, or, you know, let it bring in more tax revenue. Again, if the auction occurs before town meeting and it fails, the town will be presented an opportunity to potentially purchase the property. That question will go in front of town meeting if you so put it in front of them by favorably voting this out of committee. If the town doesn't act on that opportunity, HUD can sell the property to anybody. And you have to ask yourself, I guess you have to ask yourself, are you, I mean, anybody could either build one house, build two houses, or build more. And you have no control over that if you don't get involved in this opportunity. So that's what we are, you know, facing here. And be interested to see what the town wants to do.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. We are drawing on 9 o'clock. So, and I have made a solemn vow that I break all the time about an hour-and-a-half long meeting. And now I'm about to hit 2 hours. So I'd like to suggest that this has been a very productive discussion. It's been very good to have citizen input. We've got a lot to think about with this application, as well as the other 8 applications in front of us. Nancy, would you mind very much if I postponed further discussion on the playground proposal until our next meeting?
I think that would be fine.
Okay. And Tony, would you be willing to, you give us so much time, but would you be willing to at least be part of our meeting for a discussion on the playground proposal with the additional information you've provided?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then, barring further discussion on this, we've had a lot tonight. Any other sort of pressing business before I ask for a motion to adjourn? Stunned silence. Okay. How about a motion? How about a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn this meeting. Nancy Cantelmo.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Dave Wilson.
Thank you, Dave. All right, I'm going to do a roll call vote on this. Paul Spurn. All in favor, Paul Spurn? He's gone away. Nancy?
Aye.
Jimmy Dolan, we know, has gone to read Goodnight Moon.
I'm back, but I'll say aye.
Okay, good.
I did my job.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sorry, Lynn, I was offline. I don't know why it shut down. So if you're moving to adjourn the meeting, I'll vote aye as many times as is necessary.
Okay, very good. Ellen?
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. Okay, thank you, folks. We'll resume next week, 7 o'clock. And Nancy will get back to the playground proposal. And then we really need to look at the overall sort of overall listing of the proposals and start really thinking about the amount of money that we really have to spend. So I sent out a revised chart just earlier today, and you'll notice that we have over $2 million of requests. We have some matching components. And in terms of our available funding, with the amount that we may be expecting from our real estate surcharge and match this year, as well as general reserve and housing, we might have $700,000 available to us. So we're going to have to make some hard decisions. So thank you all, and see you next week.